Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Timmeh and I'll be guiding you through our Sorcerous Cup analysis for Pokemon Go PvP from the Joburg PvP Arena. As you can see, we have some new formats as well as new color schemes on the channel, and we sincerely hope you like it. Jumping right into the Sorcerous Cup, or as I would like to call, the Cup of Many Creepy Faces.
No! No!
Let's have a look at the rules of this format. First of all, you're only allowed to use Ice, Poison, Fairy, Psychic, and Normal types. Only Pokemon with a second charge move of 50k Stardust or less are allowed. The baby Pokemon discount does not count here. This means that you can't get a second move on a baby Pokemon, which is cheaper, then evolve it into the actual Pokemon. This is against the rules. Lastly, no Shadow Pokemon, and there are also restricted Pokemon highlighted in the red on the bottom. For the sake of simplicity, I have split the Pokemon into their typing. Please note that this is merely highlights of the top performance of this meta. There's some Pokemon that won't be featured here, but they can be valid in certain teams. It all comes down to user preference as well as experience and strategy, so please remember to practice and simulate your matchups. In our first group, we have the normal types. Starting off with Munchlax, this is this little guy's meta to shine. With a lack of fighter presence and general weakness to ghost types from the psychics, Munchlax has just the right moveset to take advantage of the meta. Lick targets the psychic types, while Body Slam is spammy enough to bully with neutral damage. Bulldoze targets the poisons and Bronzong, but you can also switch it up with Gunk Shot to surprise the fairy types as well. On top of this, Munchlax has very good bulk to take advantage of the spammy nature of its moves. Next up, we have Lickitung and Licky. Both are good in this meta, with Lickitung uniquely targeting Azumarill and Celium with Power Whip, while Licky targets the poison types and Bronzong with Earthquake. There is a downside if you are looking to run Lickitung. You will need a perfect IV max version that has the special move Body Slam, while Licky is a bit more accessible but will still need Body Slam. This move is only obtainable through an old special event or Elite TMs. Our next Pokemon is Linoone, with Shadow Claw, Thunder, and Grass Knot, or Dig. We'll start with the downside first. This Pokemon needs to be max level in order to be viable. It is a significant Stardust investment, but with this you do have a Pokemon that have very wide coverage versus Flying, Water, or Poison, while running the excellent Shadow Claw for fast move. Our next Pokemon is Noctowl with Wing Attack, Sky Attack, and Psychic or Nightshade. This flying and normal type is very bulky and have very good pressuring tools with Sky Attack. Its choice of second charge move can allow it to have teeth against poison or psychic types. Be aware of fairies, ice, and certain dark types that can also out-tank Noctowl. Other than that, it is a nice, cheap, and solid choice to consider for your team. Next up, we have Kangaskhan with Mud Slap, Crunch, Para Punch, or Earthquake, or Brick Break. Another good normal type Pokemon with very unique coverage, Mud Slap can surprise Poison and Bronzong, while Crunch adds further psychic type demise. You can run Para Punch or Bait while boosting, or Earthquake for nuking. But the best number seems to be from the legacy move Brick Break, which brings in enough damage to allow it to really bring the threat to other bulky normal types too. Next we have Alolan Raticate, running Quick Attack, Crunch, and Hyper Beam or Hyper Fang. This is a normal type that excels at hunting other psychic types and can also swing big with Hyper Beam to get some surprising wins against fairies switching in. Be aware of the double weakness to counter as well as weakness to fairies. Our last Pokemon for the normal type highlight is Ferret, running Quick Attack or Sucker Punch, Brick Break, and Hyper Beam. This walking meme can excel at hunting other normal types with Brick Break while shaking off their ghost type damage. Hyper Beam can give it surprise wins against other Pokemon switching in. You can also run Sucker Punch instead of Quick Attack to give it more threat against the Psychic types. Our next section is the Psychic types. The first Pokemon here is Bronzong. This unique Steel and Psychic type has given this Pokemon double resistance against Poison and Psychic. The highly damaging Confusion getting to Psyshocks alarmingly quickly, while Bulldoze and Flash Cannon can help Bronzong cover unique gaps in the team. Bronzong's unique typing and resistance will make it a popular pick for this cup. Be aware of it and make sure you have appropriate ghost or ground counters. The next Pokemon we have is Hypno, running Confusion, Thunder Punch, and a wide choice of potential second moves. Shadow Ball will be the most common as it will give you great neutral damage versus the rest of the meta besides the Dark and Normal types, while Focus Blast will flip this around. There's also a good case to make for Psychic, as this will still do good neutral damage against the normal types while now really hating on the poison types. Our next Pokemon is Medicham, with Counter, Power Up Punch, Psychic, or Ice Punch. This Pokemon is unique with damaging counter moves to target the dark types as well as the normal types, while Power Up Punch allows it to bait out shields while boosting Medicham's attack stat, and the second move of Ice Punch or Psychic will allow for great nuking power versus what remains. Only downside is that you will need to find a max IV version as well as raise it to the max level in order for it to be viable for Great League. Next Pokemon we have is Gothitelle, with a unique skill set of Confusion, Rock Slide, and Psychic. It combines decent bulk with Rock Slide and a damaging charm to get ice types as well as knockdown, while Psychic will come handy versus some of the fairy types and poisons. Also looking at Lunatone with Confusion, Rock Slide, and Moonblast. Lunatone brings in additional coverage compared to Gothitelle against Darks by incorporating Moonblast. However, Lunatone does lack the bulk to go one-on-one with a lot of the dark types out there, so a one-on-one slugfest is not advised. Our next Pokemon is Alakazam, running moves Counter, Fire Punch, and Shadow Ball or Psychic. This Pokemon has the right fast moves to throw down with the dark types as well as Fire Punch to take the fight to Bronzong. Shadow Ball or Psychic are both viable second moves depending on what you want Alakazam to cover. Moving on to Slowbro, using Confusion, Water Pulse, or Ice Beam. This Pokemon has very well-rounded stats and will generally leave most opponents mauled even when it is in a losing matchup. It is a solid choice in this meta, however the water subtyping doesn't give it too much of an edge unless up against certain ice types. The last Pokemon in our Psychic highlight is Zubat. Using Confusion, Aerial Ace as well as Psychic, this Pokemon is as anti-fighter as it gets and can kill a Toxicroak before it can even get to its first Mud Bomb. Aerial Ace allows it to have additional bite versus the few grasses and bug types in this meta. Be very aware of the added weakness to ice as well as electric due to the added flying subtyping. Up next we have the fairy types. Starting off with Wigglytuff. This fairy type Pokemon is blessed with the additional subtyping of normal type as well as impressive bulk. Factor in the damage from Charm means that this Pokemon can win a lot of one-on-one slugfests versus other Pokemon by just simply bullying them into submission. This also allows it to save up the slow charging Ice Beam and Play Rough for the next Pokemon that could be switching in. The neutral normal subtyping also means that it resists the ghost moves such as Lick and Shadow Ball that is popular in this meta. Keep it away from the poison and steel moves and you will have a great contributing member to the team. The next Pokemon is Clefable. This pure fairy type is blessed with arguably the better moveset than Wiggly in Meteor Mash, and also now have choices of Moonblast or Psychic depending on what you want to cover. Just bear in mind that it is less bulky compared to Wiggles, as well as no longer resistant to Ghost. The next Fairy type Pokemon is a non-charmer in the meta. Don't worry, its reputation should precede it already, and it is still solid in this cup. We are of course talking about Azumarill, using Bubble, Hydro Pump, Play Rough, and Ice Beam. Play Rough definitely seems like the preferred moveset for this meta, but there's good merit for running Ice Beam, especially if you're having a Noctowl problem. Just bear in mind that it is still not a guaranteed win against Noctowl, it is just too tanky. However, it is a great generalist in this cup, even when the usual target that it excels at is missing in this cup. Next Pokemon we have is Alolan Ninetales, using Charm, Psyshock, and Ice Beam. Psyshock is a nice move to supplement the slow charging Charm, as it has much less energy requirement compared to the movesets that other Charmers on this page have to use. There is also merit of using Powder Snow instead of Charm, and it does allow Ninetales to become more of an Ice generalist, but it loses too many matchups for my personal liking. Bear in mind that Ninetales' decent attack stat and passable bulk actually means it can get the job done most of the time with just Charm by itself, so losing Charm on this Pokemon might be too much of a trade-off. The next Pokemon we have is Granbull. This Pokemon has a unique combination of Charm, Crunch, and Close Combat. With high attack stat and pressure tools like Close Combat and Crunch, Granbull may have just the right tools to carve out a niche in this meta. However, please be aware that the high attack stat also comes with a question of bulk and the self debuff from Close Combat. Last Pokemon we have for our fairy highlight is Togekiss. In this case, the flying subtyping may be more harm than good due to the full page of potential ice type counters and also prevalence of poison in this cup. It might be borderline spice pick due to the number of potential counters in this meta, but Aerial Ace can be a very, very good potential move to have as a neutral moveset. It really does borderline on spice though, so just keep this in mind if you're considering Togekiss. Our next highlight is the poison types, starting off with Alolan Muck with Poison Jab or Snarl, Dark Pulse, and Sludge Wave or Gunk Shot. Poison Jab allows for extra damage to really hit the fairy types, while Snarl will focus this Pokemon on psychic types. Dark Pulse is pretty much required, while your choice of second move will depend on if you want nuking power or the slightly quicker Sludge Wave. There's merit for both, as Gunk Shot will give you better performance versus the tankier fairies such as Wigglytuff, but you will sometimes lose to the more agile ones like Clefable or even some of the other Charmers out there, so you want to actually reach a poison charge move a bit quicker, so Sludge Wave would be picked in this case. So just keep this in mind and remember to run some Sins when you're using Alolan Muck. The next Pokemon is Venusaur, which once again is a solid performer in this meta and a bane of all Charm users in this cup. Vine Whip builds up the Frenzy Plant for very good damage, while Sludge Bomb will take out a good decent chunk of HP of Charmers, if not outright kill them. Beware of the Ice type, which will hit it super effectively, as well as the Psychic types. Then we have Skuntank, running Poison Jab, Flamethrower, and Sludge Bomb or Crunch. Flamethrower is great for this meta for neutral damage and Bronzong, while Sludge Bomb can give it wins against certain fairies, and Snarl is there for the psychics, but please be aware of its weakness to Pokemon running the counter move as well as ground moves. Up next we have Haunter running Shadow Claw, Shadow Punch, and Shadow Ball or Sludge Bomb. With the upcoming Shadow Punch on Gengar, this might be the last cup where Haunter is meta. This poison ghost type still have great pressure tools to take big chunk of HP from most of the meta that is not dark and normal, Sludge Bomb can still be a very healthy alternative to Shadow Ball to catch normal types switching in, or that tries to tank a Shadow Ball, or to hit the fairies even harder. The next Pokemon we have is Garbodor, running Infestation, Body Slam, and Gunk Shot. As the only Pokemon that's in the Poison type category that has Body Slam, and also packing decent bulk, this might just be an excellent meta for this Pokemon to thrive. Body Slam plus Infestation gives a very good pressure, while not a lot of other Pokemons can stand up to a direct Gunk Shot and not essentially be put out of commission. Being a pure Poison type also gives it certain advantages of not having other weaknesses attached to it, but the usual Poison and Ground weakness would apply here. Our next Pokemon is Toxicroak with Counter, Mud Bomb, and Sludge Bomb. This particular moveset gives Toxicroak a unique niche to hunt its fellow Poison types, with one exception, and Sludge Bomb allows it some bite against Fairy types that may be switching in, and Toxicroak has the potential to turn some of these matches around by having just a few slivers of extra energy. The glaring weakness to Confusion still applies here, however, so keep the Croak away from the Psychics. Then we have Tentacruel with Poison Jab, Acid Spray, and Hydro Pump. This Pokemon can be a great addition to any team if we are just looking at the number of wins. However, closer inspection will reveal that most of these wins rely on baiting with Acid Spray. So if playing mind games and debuffing are what you're looking for in a Pokemon, this may be a good pick for you. Hydro Pump still is a great nuking tool against most of the meta, it's just that you are required to bait off some shields before doing the 1-2 punch of Acid Spray and Hydro Pump. Our last Pokemon in the Poison section is Venomoth, running Confusion, Poison Fang, and Bug Buzz. This Pokemon uniquely hates on Toxicroak and other Poison types, while Bug Buzz brings neutral damage and targets Psychics, while Poison also targets the Fairies. It has a pretty impressive spread for what it's actually covering. The downside of Venomoth is that it is not the bulkiest, and it also is a very expensive Pokemon to raise. So keep this in mind if you do decide to go for this Bug and Poison type. In our next section we have the Ice types, starting off with Frostlass running Powder Snow, Shadow Ball, and Avalanche or Crunch. This Pokemon hits most of the Psychic, Grass, Fighters, and Flyers very well in this meta. The highly damaging Avalanche can also shore up a lot of wins, which makes Frostlass a good closing Pokemon. It can also interestingly use Crunch to target a whole different segment of the meta. Unfortunately, with its high damage potential and closing potential, it also has very flimsy bulk, so it can't really stand up to a lot of hits. Expect to at least spend a shield to cover it. The next Pokemon we have on our list is Alolan Sandslash, running Powder Snow, Ice Punch, and Bulldoze, or Gyro Ball, or Blizzard. This Pokemon resists normal, Psychic, Fairy, Grass, and Flying moves, and double resist Poison and Ice. With a weakness to Ground, which is rare, and double weakness to Fighting, which will probably be in every team, it can spam Ice Punch to get most of the job done, and there's a wide choice of second charge moves to choose from to allow it to target different segments of the meta. Most will probably run Bulldoze, but there will be some that wants to use Gyro Ball to really kill Fairies or other Ice types, and Blizzard brings very heavy nuking power against this meta's tanks. Just bear in mind that it is also not the most tankiest Pokemon, and once it gets trapped by a counter user, that is pretty much it. Next up we have Glalie running Ice Shard with Shadow Ball and Avalanche. This floating Chucky face is unique as one of the few pure ice Pokemon in this cup. As such, it is only weak to specific counter users and the odd water, rock, and steel moves. It also has a lot more bulk compared to Frostlass and can simply outbulk a lot of potentially negative matchups. It actually has almost the same performance as Frostlass due to its impressive bulk. This meta might just be the right one Galele to shine in. The next Pokemon we have is Celio, with Powder Snow, Body Slam, and Aurora Beam or Water Pulse. The OG Span Master is still the quickest body slam in the meta and brings its unique blend of pressure into this cup. With the rarity of grass and fighting in this cup, Celio can potentially carve out a very good niche for itself. Just bear in mind that because most of its moves are not high damaging moves, it actually means that most of the matchups will probably be close matchups. The next Pokemon we have on our list is Cloyster, with Ice Shard, Icy Wind, and Hydro Pump or Avalanche. Cloyster is the only Icy Wind user in this meta, and it has sky-high defense stat to fully take advantage of it. Icy Wind by itself beats Golbat and Noctowl, and combined with either Avalanche or Hydro Pump will net an impressive amount of wins against fellow Ice type or Grass, most of the normal types not packing Grass Knot, or Thunder, and even selected Psychic types. It is certainly a very good contender. The last Pokemon we have is Weavile with Snarl, Avalanche, and Foul Play. Snarl will generate Avalanche at a truly alarming rate, whilst Foul Play targets the Psychic types that are rampant in this cup. Be aware that with Weavile's sky-high attack stats, it is truly a glass cannon and lacks the staying power for a prolonged threat. Expect to spend shields to cover it and expect it not to be able to take abuse back. Our last section is what I would like to call the bug and grass and also the spice picks. I specifically left out some of the grass types simply because they fall into the kind of niche Razor Leaf section. Razor Leafers are basically Pokemons that use Razor Leaf, and they typically rely on this highly damaging move, decentish attack stat, and they simply just use this move like Charmers, that kind of thing, to try and hit and chunk away at enemies' HP. You'll see that we only have the Gloom as well as Vileplume in this section. There are lots of other very good picks of Razor Leafers, but I feel like these two are probably the best that also have poison subtyping attached to them. So looking at these, you can see that they actually cover quite a wide different range as well. So you have Razor Leaf, Sludge Bomb, as well as Moonblast. The reason why I highlighted these two is because they now have a Moonblast which is recently buffed, so it actually makes them quite nice. The biggest issue with running Razor Leafers in this meta is that besides Azumarill and maybe Tentacruel, which actually takes neutral damage, there's not a lot of other targets for it to hit. So you're relying on neutral high damaging fast move to hopefully do enough damage. So that's why these are kind of borderlining on the spice. Then we have Beedrill. I've left it towards the end here simply because Beedrill, we are waiting for Community Day to come through to give Beedrill the much needed draw run. If you look at what the current Beedrill tool sets that we have, it runs Poison Jab, X-Scissor, and Fell Stinger or Sludge Bomb, but the best performance you'll still have is probably running Draw Run. Draw Run was recently buffed so that it actually costs less energy, and on a bug type that also is poison means that it can dish out very good ground damage to other poison types while not being afraid of the poison types' counter poison moves. The next Pokemon we have here is Scolipede. It runs Poison Jab, X Scissor, as well as Mega Horn. There's a case to be made here that the 2 bug charge moves will make it a very good Psychic Hunter. However, Poison Jab and this Pokemon's semi-decent bulk and questionable poison type sub move that makes it take neutral damage from confusion kind of dampens its role as a Psychic Hunter. It also doesn't quite kill as a Morel because it lacks a poison charge move. So, yeah, you know, it's not that good. It's more of a dedicated grass hunter. Then the next 2 Pokemon, I'm just going to bring them up here all together, is Wobbuffet as well as Grimer. They definitely fall into the spice section, but they do work as good potentials, I guess, for certain teams. They definitely are spicy because you won't see a lot of them. Reasoning that you won't see a lot of them is that for Wobbuffet you need to run Return, first of all, so you need a purified version, or I don't know if you can actually Elite TM Return onto a non-purified or a normal Wobbuffet. Then you also need to have a perfect one. So not only do you need to have a purified version, it needs to be a purified perfect version. Just keep that in mind. But what actually comes with this sky high barrier of entry is also sky high HP. It has 3 times the HP of most of the Pokemon that you see here, and it can simply just, you know, return you to death with its very decent charge move in Counter. So it's a Psychic type that is running Counter that also have very good neutral nuking moves. And there's not a lot of things besides the odd Dark type that's going to be around here that can really threaten it, and even those Dark types might not be able to kill it soon enough before it runs out of HP. Think Chansey back in this other cup that we had. Some people ran Chansey. Then you have Grimer, which it's not the tankiest, also doesn't have the best attack stat, but because you need a perfect IV and maxing it out, it has decentish bulk. But also look at what kind of coverage it has. It has Mud Slap, which is a ground type move on a poison type Pokemon. Very interesting. And it has Sludge Bomb, which is great for killing fairies and other things that don't quite resist it. And Mud Bomb as well. So Mud Slap plus Mud Bomb means lots and lots of spam. And because it's pure poison type, it can actually function as a very good anti-poison. And there's not a lot of other things that it is scared of running straight ground type moves and still with Sludge Bomb in the back to surprise someone. So something worthwhile considering as well, if you have a perfect one, of course. That's why these 2 kind of fall very hard into the spice category. Anyways, so that is our Sorcerer's Cup top-down analysis. Thank you very much for listening to me, as well as if you have any more questions about the Sorcerer's Cup, or maybe if we've missed out on some Pokemons that you would like to discuss, you feel free to please add them into the comments section. We'll be around to try and help. And as usual, see you next time.